All right, y'all can have a seat. Good morning. We got one more go at this. Let's open up our Bibles to Psalm 23. You know what we do when we gather together each morning, and it has been a good week to be together, and we are going to finish strong together. I want to say something that I think is very important to you today, and I have a little bit of worry that I may try to say too much in and around it. So just to be clear, I want to start by telling you where I want to go with this, and then we'll get there together. Really what I feel compelled to encourage you and what we feel compelled to encourage you to do today is to let your life be determined by eternity. Or to put that differently, to let your dash be defined by the line. And we're looking at the last verse in Psalm 23. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And later on, we're going to key in on some key words. We're going to think about the word goodness and the word love and the word forever, and we're going to come around to these things, but I want to approach it by getting ourselves in the right mindset. And really what I guess what I want to do is ask a question that is kind of a weird and uncomfortable question, but it's obviously an important one to ask, and that is, how do you know you're not wasting your life? Like, you only get one of these, so how do you know that you're using it well, that you're spending it well, that you're living it in a way that you're going to be glad that you lived it that way? And I don't know if you've noticed this, but we're kind of always evaluating our lives. We're kind of always evaluating how things are going. You know, whenever we greet up with one another, we say things like, how you doing, or how's it going? And I don't know how seriously you mean that or how seriously you take that. Sometimes it's just another way of saying hi, but often we mean it and we want the question answered. And when you answer the question, how's it going? You're saying like, how's your life? Like evaluate how things are with you. And we do this all the time. We do this with our days. I would imagine that even though y'all are big high schoolers and you're growing up and you're kind of doing your own thing, for many of y'all still, you get home at the end of the day, and maybe you go home from school, your folks go home from work, and they ask you, how was your day? And I don't know how much you say. Maybe it depends on your personality or your relationship with your mom or your dad or how that day was, but maybe you say a lot, maybe you say a little, but when we say, how was your day, we're asking like, evaluate your day. Was it a good day? Was it a bad day? Was it a little bit of both? How was it? And at some point in our story, we're going to get to a point where we look back on our lives and think like, how was my life? And eventually we're going to get to the other side and look back on it as a whole, and the question will be asked, how was your life? And I think it's valuable for us to ask the question now so that we don't get caught wasting it. And that's where this idea of the dash comes in. And I don't know if you've heard this before. This was kind of memed out about 10 years ago, so it may have missed you, but there was this talk of, live your dash. And the dash represents your life. And it actually comes from a cemetery. It comes from a tombstone. And a few weeks ago, I was doing one of these MOVE events in Tennessee, and on extended rec day, where you have some time to kind of do different things. I wasn't with my family that week. They were other places, and so I just kind of introverted out a bit, and I went and did some work at a coffee shop, and right across the street from this coffee shop was this cemetery. And I don't know, maybe I'm kind of weird, but I like to spend time in cemeteries. So I go over there, and I just take a walk through the cemetery, and I'm just kind of looking at these tombstones, and it's interesting, because there's all these people I don't know. And they all got names like Thomas and Leah and, Betty and all these people who I've never met and obviously I won't meet. And I'm noticing different things about them. And one of these guys was a university president, and another lady was a doctor, and there was a teacher. And it seems like some of them had a lot of money because they had really big tombstones, and others of them had not a lot because they just had little tombstones. And there was always a birthday and a death day. And I didn't find a single person whose birthday and death date was the same. All these tombstones and names and dates are different, but the one thing everybody has in common is that dash in between the date of birth and the date of death. That's the one thing that holds us all together. On every tombstone is a dash, and the dash represents your life. And the question is is your dash going to be well lived? Is it going to be well spent? Because you don't want to waste the one life that you have. And I think about this a lot because, I don't know about you, I think about death a lot because it's coming for us. It's coming for you, and it's coming for me, and it's coming for the people we love. And I was really thinking about this not too long ago because I heard this story a couple months ago. This happened, and y'all may have heard this. I don't know if it was in the news in your part of the country, but it was in the news in our part of the country. And there's this young couple. I'll show you a picture of them. Their names are Davy and Natalie Lloyd. And they're a sweet young couple, love the Lord, serve the Lord, and they are, at the time of this picture, 23 and 21 years old. They've been married for a couple years, and they kind of got an interesting story. And so Davey grew up wanting to be a missionary in Haiti. So he grew up in a Christian home with folks that were involved in missions work all over the world. And I mean, from a very young age, he knew he wanted to be a missionary in Haiti. And y'all know how it is. People ask you, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I don't know what your answer is to the question. You know, I told you whenever I was young, my answer was, I want to be a professional athlete. And then I realized that wasn't going to happen. And so for a while, it was, I want to start my own company and make a lot of money and take over the world, you know. And then for me, there was a switch. When I was 16 years old, I was at a place like this, and God just got a hold of my heart and said, no, he said to me, I want you to do ministry. I want you to do ministry as a job. And so that kind of set the course of my life. But Davey, man, he knew, like you asked him when he was 5 years old, what do you want to do with your life? I want to be a missionary to Haiti, you know, and then 10 years old, 15 years old, same thing. And so anyway, he grows up and he goes off to college and he meets this young lady, Natalie, and he's thinking, you know, she's really sweet and she's cute and she loves the Lord, but I don't know because I know what I want to do. So he sort of set this up to where they went on this short-term mission trip to Haiti, and he was just sort of watching to see how it went. And sure enough, she loved it. And she was like, independently of him, she's like, I want to be a missionary to Haiti. And he's like, awesome, I want to marry you. and so they got married, and they got married just a couple years ago in June. And they immediately began planning and preparing to go be missionaries to Haiti. And they raised the money, and they got all the support and the prayer partners. And actually, in January of this year, 2024, they moved over there. And they started doing work. And they were working with orphans, and they were working with some of the churches. And they were already experiencing some fruit. And it was seemingly going pretty well. But then as spring turned into summer, they accidentally got caught up in the crosshairs of some rival gangs. And, well, to make a long story short, just over a couple months ago, they were walking out of their home, and one of these gangs in the area just shot them and killed them and then burned the bodies to prove a point. Yeah, and it's like, that's terrible, right? And it's like, what do we make of that? Like, is this a tragedy? Yes, obviously. Like, you don't even have to be a believer in Jesus to say, that's tragic. Like, that's terrible. Nobody would want that to happen to someone. But maybe another question, and for our purposes, maybe a better question to ask is, well, is this a waste? Was their life a waste? Was it a failure, or was it a success? And that's a trickier question because it depends on how you're looking at it. And if you're looking at this and you're evaluating it just in light of the moment, if you're only looking at right now, it kind of seems like a failure. It kind of seems like, man, like all this effort and all this desire, and then they get started and boom, it's done. And so if you're only looking at it from the standpoint of right now, kind of seems like it's a failure, almost a waste. And yet if you're looking at it from the standpoint of eternity, if you're evaluating this in light of forever, then it looks a little bit different. Is it still a tragedy? Absolutely. But is it a waste? Absolutely not. Like, their life is still testifying to the very message that they wanted to drive everything they do. And that's really what we're wrestling with, is how you're going to evaluate your life, how you're going to make sense of your life. Are you going to let your dash be defined by right now or by the bigger moment? And the reason we're talking about this today is because our word for the day is pace. Everybody say pace. Thank you. That's the word for today. And you're going to be thinking about the pace of your life, and you're going to be making a plan for what to do when you go home really, really soon. And what you have to remember is that your pace is determined by your race. Not like your ethnicity, but the race you're running. The rapidity of your pace, how fast you're running, is determined by the length of the race that you're in. And we all know this. Some of y'all are runners. Some of us are not. But whatever, like, everybody knows, if you're in a sprint, how hard are you going? Hard. Like, you're literally sprinting. You're running as fast as you can from start to finish because it's a short-term race. But if you're in a marathon, are you just going to take off in a dead sprint? No, because pretty soon you're going to wear out. And so you have to pace yourself. Again, the pace that you're running is determined by the length of the race that you're in. And so for us, we have to back up. And you might think about it like this. You might think about there being picture a timeline of all of time. And so the beginning point is like when God spoke the world into existence. And then that timeline just keeps on going. And that arrow just never stops all the way into eternity and beyond, which never ends. And so there's this never-ending timeline. And like your life is on there. Your dash, your years is on that timeline, but it's just a tiny little dot. And honestly, if we were to put this to scale, you wouldn't even be able to see it. It's so small in relationship to eternity. And yet your life, we can represent it with this dot. And what you've got to decide is your dash going to be defined by the dot right now? Or is your dash going to be defined by the line, eternity? And this brings us back to Psalm chapter 23. And again, we're looking specifically at verse 6. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. But I want to back up with you for a moment. And one more time, I want you to kind of take the whole thing in, because it's designed to be taken as a unit. And so if I could just one more time speak these words over you, the words of Psalm 23, which is a psalm of David. And it goes like this. The Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's Psalm 23. And you have to remember that it's a poem. And as a poem, it's been structured in really intentional ways. And the more you read it, I promise you, the more you'll see. And one of the things that's interesting to think about is some of the different ways it communicates beyond the words themselves. So let me give you an example of what I mean. In the original Hebrew, the language it was written in, the poem's actually laid out in 20 lines. Line 10 is, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. That's line 10, you are with me. Line 20, toward the end, is, I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so right in the middle, you are with me, and right at the end, I shall dwell with you forever. When we say that this psalm is about the with God life, we're not making it up. The psalm is an invitation for you to do life with God along the way, all the way to the end. And one of my other favorite features of this psalm is the way it sort of begins and ends. And you maybe notice this, that the Lord is only mentioned twice in the psalm. And he's mentioned toward the top and toward the bottom. And I'm not going to get into the details of the Hebrew because it's been a long week and y'all are probably pretty tired. But it's actually even more intentional in the original. How you start with, the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall dwell forever in the house of the Lord. And so these two mentions of the Lord bracket the psalm. And the point is that the psalm is a symbol of reality. The psalm is a microcosm of the universe, that God is the beginning and end of all things. God is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the center and the circumference. He's the bounded edges and fills the entire middle. God is everything. And the point is not just to make a statement about reality. It's actually that this microcosm is an invitation for you to base your life on the poem, for you to make your life match the poem, for you to make your life match reality. For you to make God your beginning and your end, your center and circumference of all things, your everything. That's the invitation of the poem. If you want to live the with God life, then you make God everything for you. And that's this moment we're in where, again, you're going to make a plan. And when you plan out your life, you're thinking about what's most important to you. And the psalm says, hey, God is the most important thing. Make him the most important thing to you. And you've got to really wrestle with this, because every single one of you has certain things that are important to you. You live your life by an ordered set of priorities, by a hierarchy of values, the stuff that matters most to you. And I don't really know what matters to you individually. It's probably a little bit different at your stage of life than what I would say at my stage of life, but usually it's similar things. And maybe for many of you, it's an activity that you're involved in. Maybe it's a sport. Like maybe you play football or baseball or basketball or soccer or hockey or water polo or lacrosse. I don't know what you're into. And you just love the sport. Maybe you're really good at it, or maybe you just like being part of a team or pushing yourself physically. For others, perhaps it's not so much athletic. It's more artistic. Maybe you sing like an angel. Maybe you're a show choir queen or king. And when you sing, it's like heaven stops and all of us just turn and listen because it's beautiful. Or maybe you can draw pictures or tell stories. Maybe you're a coder, or maybe you like to make films. Maybe it's not so much something that you do, but it's more this vision you have for your future. Like you're living your life with this vision of being a successful business person, or maybe being a mom or a dad, having a family, making a certain amount of money, having a certain comfort. I don't know what you want, but we all have certain things that we want. And it's not even that they're all bad. I want to be careful and make sure this is clear. It's not even that these things are like a problem, but the point of the psalm that's saying if you want to make a good plan, then you got to make God first. Like you got to put God above and beyond all of it. And that's where, though, it gets a little bit tricky to know how to do this, because it's not as simple as making a list, you know? It's like if you make a list and you just put, number 1, God, number 2, family, number 2, school. I don't know what it would be for you. Number 3, 4, sports. But it's not that simple, because if you just make a list and put God as number 1, then you might fall into this trap of living your life in a way that, like, well, I'm going to do the God thing, and then I'm going to do the other thing. And that's not the way to go, because then you're going to end up being one of those people who you do the God thing on Sundays and like maybe some other times during the week, but most of the time you're not doing the God thing. And it's like, no, that's not who we want to be. So like, how do we think through this? I heard somebody say one time, it's not so much that God is the first item on the list. It's more that God is the pen with which you're writing and the paper on which you make the list. And I remember thinking, like, That's kind of artistic, but I don't even know what the heck that means, you know? So I don't know how you're going to think through this exactly. Maybe it's like God himself is first, and then God, therefore, family, God, therefore, sports, God, therefore, your future, whatever. However you shake this down with your leaders, and you're going to process this later on today, however you put this into paper and practice, again, the point is that God is the center of everything, and that if you want to live the life that God is inviting you to live, then God has to be at the center of it all. And yet, let's be real with one another. Even in a place like this, and especially back home, some of y'all are going to get to a point where you're like, why? Like, I get that that's what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know if that's what I want to do. I can't even see God. He's not even here, and he doesn't actually show up in the ways I think he should show up. So he's really confusing to me, and I don't even really know how to know him. So maybe I should just not. Like, why should I base my life on God? Why should I center everything on him? And I actually think that's a really good question. And if you're asking that question, I don't think something's wrong with you. I think you're just thinking honestly about life and God and how you're going to make your way through it. And I actually think that the psalm knows you're going to ask that question, because I think the last verse answers it in a couple different ways. I think verse 6 gives us two answers to the question, why should I center my life on God? And the first answer is in the first part of the verse. First answer is because God is better. That's the first answer. The beginning of verse 6 says, surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life. So let's try to think this through. We know we're talking about God, but we're talking about God in some particular ways. We're using the word goodness and we're using the word love. And well, what do those mean? And goodness is, you know what goodness is. It's good. It's, quality. It's when something is what it's supposed to be. And the Bible doesn't just say that God is another good thing. The Bible says God is the essence of all goodness, of all quality. So every good thing is like a reflection of him. Every delicious thing that you've ever eaten, whether it's chocolate or steak or ice cream or I don't know what you're into, but every good flavor you've ever put in your mouth is designed to reflect how satisfying he is. Every beautiful image that you've ever seen with your eyes, whether it's a sunset or a mountain or a person, maybe it's a mother and child or some elderly grandpa and grandma who are just loving on each other, and you just see that and you think, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Every beautiful thing you've seen is designed to direct your attention to his beauty. Every impressive feat that we witness, whether it's Steph and Caitlin hitting threes or whether it's, somebody singing beautiful notes, it's like, man, all of that is designed. It's just these tiny reflections of his goodness. He is the essence of all goodness. And then you have love, and actually it gets a little funky here too, because it's not a normal word for love. There's a normal Hebrew word for love, and this isn't it. And this is a word, I actually probably shouldn't have you say it out loud because you got to kind of spit to say it. It's the word chesed. You got to make a funky sound in the back of your throat. That's the word. And if you've read Psalm 23 in different translations, it's not always translated love. Sometimes it says goodness and mercy. Sometimes it says goodness and loving kindness, which is like not a real word. But we're trying to figure out how to translate this word because it's a different kind of love. It's a love that's hard to put into words. It's like a covenant love. It's a divine love. It's a perfect love. It's a loyal love, a love that's always there, a love that is gladly self-sacrificial. And so we're talking about the essence of all goodness and a love that is so great it defies words. And we're not just saying that these are things. These aren't just static. Look at what it says. Surely your goodness and love will follow me, will pursue me, will come after me. Now come after you. The goodness and love of God are coming after you, not in like a bad way, but in a sweet way. It's like whenever my daughter Claire was much younger, whenever she was about 18 months old, she's so adorable, a little just bouncy toddler, and she wore these cloth diapers, and so she had this like pink diaper cover around them, and it was just she's always had this little pink bubble booty, you know what I mean? It was the cutest thing I've ever seen. And I'd come home from work, and I'd open the door, and there she is in her little pink bubble booty, and she would just come up to me, and she would say, Daddy, I chase you, and then she would turn around, and she would start running. And you know what she's saying, right? She's saying, Daddy, are you going to chase me? And y'all better believe, I don't care how tired I was or how stressful I was or what happened at work, I just dropped everything I had and I chased my little girl so that I could pick her up and squeeze her and kiss her. All of my goodness and love is coming after her. And this is saying all of God's goodness and love is coming after you. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but God's sort of been moving throughout the poem. At the beginning of the poem, he's the one who's leading us. He's out in front leading us to these places, these good places. In the middle of the poem, he's alongside us, with us. And now at the end of the poem, he's behind us, pushing us on. And the point is not that God moves around. God is not bound by space, so he doesn't have to move around. The point is that he's all-encompassing. So we're talking about a life in which you are literally surrounded by the essence of all goodness and a love that defies comprehension that is coming after you all the time. Make me a better offer. Like, find me a better deal than that. And so the psalm says you should center your life on God because God is better. And the second reason is in the last statement. It is because eternity is coming. Eternity is on the way. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Not just for a while, not just for a long time, forever, forever and ever and ever, unto length of days forever. And I know forever is a hard thing to wrap your mind around. You know, it's sort of like, it's challenging to think through, but this is the fundamental decision that you have to make is, are you going to base your life on immediate gratification, or are you going to base your life on eternal perfection? Now, you can base your life on immediate gratification, and you can live only for the moment. And you can make your life about whatever pleasures you can experience today. Like, that's an option that is available to you. Or you can base your life on eternal perfection. And like I said, eternity is a hard thing to wrap your mind around. And heaven is a hard idea to grasp. But the Bible makes it clear that, like, heaven is perfect. It's everything good about this world, only better, without everything bad. And the best thing about it is that God will be there right in the center. He is the treasure. He is the prize. He is the reward. And so we're talking about, I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And this is a decision that you have to make. And I confess to you that I don't think it's a very hard decision. Like, you're living in the middle of your story. And no story makes sense from the middle. You can't make sense of a story from being in the middle of it. This is why, like, nobody watches a great movie for the first time and you get halfway through and you're like, I think I'm good, I'm done, I've seen enough, I understand where this is going. No, you don't. Like, you got to watch to the end in order to make sense of the whole thing. Why would we try to base our lives on the middle of the story when God has said, I know the end of the story because I am the end of the story, and I'm inviting you to base your life on me? And I think we want to trust that this is true, but we wonder, we doubt, we think, man, is heaven real, or is it just a wish? Is it just a dream? Am I just sort of trying to make something up so that I can have some comfort? And I know that we wonder if the whispers of hope that we hear from our heart are telling us the truth. We wonder if there really could be something else, something better, something more. And the world tells you all the time, no, it's just a pipe dream. It's just a false hope. Like, religion is just a game. And they tell you that all that matters is what you can see. And I got to tell you that I don't think the world always tells the truth. And I'm here to testify as best I can that heaven is real, that eternity is real, and that it is on the way, and that it is already coming, that it is partially here, that it is good, and it is worthy. The fool is the one who bases his or her life only on right now. The wise person is the one who evaluates right now in the light of eternity. So may you be wise. May the pace of your life be driven by the length of the race that you're in. May the rhythms of your life be determined by the reality of eternity. May your dash be defined by the line. Let me pray a blessing over you, God. Thank you for these people. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and guide your pace and give you peace. Amen. I love you guys. Finish strong.